here with Nate 28, and this is Crossbeats Production. So I want to just give you guys a tutorial using Maschine, because I normally do tutorials using Studio 1.3. I also use Logic as well, but primarily I like to stick to Studio 1.3 because that's kind of my favorite kind of DAW at this point. But I have a beat that I made in Maschine a while back. I think it was, actually I don't know what the date was when I made it, but I'd have to go back and look. But anyway, nonetheless, I just wanted to show you a breakdown of this beat, and especially because I had one of my viewers ask me about this particular beat, so I thought I'd just do a breakdown of it, explain how I made the beat, also just explain the kind of basics behind it, and the drum pattern and the bass and whatnot, other instruments. So to quickly go through this, I'm not going to make this a long video, but I will go through a few things here. So to start off, obviously with this beat, it's kind of a slow kind of, I guess you could call jazzy style kind of beat. It's just piano really, and a bass and some violin and horns and some synth throughout the beat. But basically the whole entire premises of the beat is based on this piano structure, which I'll play out in just a minute, and I'll explain to you kind of what the idea was behind that and how I set up the piano and stuff like that. So anyway, if you're kind of looking for beats like this, I guess this is kind of like a slow style hip-hop R&B type of thing. It may not be your type of beat. It's just something I've made a while back. I don't know as far as what I would ever use it for, but anyway, let's go through the piano part on it first, and actually no, I'll play the beat halfway through, and then I'll let you guys listen to that, and then you can take it from there. So okay, so as you can hear, it's that slow kind of vibe. It's a 96.5 BPM style beat anyway, so you can make beats faster kind of style depending on the drum pattern that you use as well. Obviously, as you're aware, drum patterns have a lot to do with the way that your beat sounds, because they're usually the driving force behind most type of music. And in this style of beat, obviously I've just got a real kind of slow drum pattern here. So I mean, to make this drum pattern, it didn't take me that long. I just played up my pianos kind of the way I wanted it to sound. So I played these chords, as you can see in here. I'll just see if I can expand them. There we go. So I played these chords out in Maschine, and when I got those chords, then I kind of just messed around with what I wanted it to sound like. So that was one structure of the chord. This is the other structure of the chord. So these are two different sets of chords that I kind of use. They're kind of in sync, but not exactly the same kind of chords. So obviously this is just a long, drawn out sort of chord, 3-chord structure there. And then I've got sort of little piano hits there and there, with here and there with chords and single notes. So when I went through that, first off with the piano, I just basically got that, played that through there like that. Now, as you can hear, they're kind of wide, these pianos, and that's because I've panned them left to right. So with that in mind, I got the width of the piano, but they weren't playing the same thing at the same time. So that created kind of that feel of movement within the piano. and it also gave width to the piano. Normally with piano, there's two ways you want to mix your piano: either direct mono with some reverb on it, or you can kind of spread them. Or it just depends on the plugin that you're using as well. But with this particular plugin, this Alicia Keys plugin, you can actually go in and change a few different. Hang on, let me just go on there. A few different settings with the piano itself. So obviously you can change the type of piano sound, and you can change also you can also change the spread of the piano and the size of it and the space if you're using reverb as well, which this piano I'm using a bit of convolution reverb and a certain size and an amount, so minimal amount kind of thing. And I kind of don't like to spread my pianos too wide, because if you do that, then you're going to get issues with phase as well, especially when you're introducing other instruments into the track as well. But that's just one thing that you can do with the piano. I mean, obviously, like I've said here, I've just spread them both left to right, so they've kind of got similar kind of features on them, but just obviously left to right. Now, the other thing I added to this was a H delay. So if you don't have this plugin, there are other delay plugins out there, and I'm sure if you have Maschine, you'll be aware that Maschine actually has a beat delay plugin, which isn't exactly the same as H delay or that type of thing, but it does have delay features, and you can time sync them, and you can split them as well and spread the delay. So if you're looking for a delay plugin within Maschine, you can use that as an alternative to the H delay if you're looking for some kind of a delay plugin. This delay plugin here, pretty much what I've done is I've just set up the delay where it's minimal amount of feedback, so it's not really giving a whole lot of rebound with the ping pong, but it's just giving that little bit of extra width on the piano, and it's giving that spread that I wanted. So the next thing there I had was an EQ plugin, which is a Waves EQ. This comes in the Renaissance, yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Renaissance, whatever. Yeah, so it comes in the Waves plugin bundle there, which I've got earlier from another purchase I made a couple of months ago. So this EQ structure there, it's not too drastic, just taking out some in the kind of mid frequencies, just low end removal a bit there, and pretty much nothing done to the top end. But that's for a reason, because I did similar kind of moves with this second EQ, and this is not too much of a mixing video, but I just want to show you the similar EQ moves, but not exactly the same. So I did a high pass filter on that as well, and kind of some at the 500 range. But then the other thing I did was I put a group plug-in here. Originally I had this plug-in set on here with some of the top end rolled off and some of the mid stuff taken out. Well, yeah, mid frequencies taken out, and also some of the low end dipped out there as well, just the annoying frequencies. But then I pretty much used Neutron instead, and I just because I'm using this plugin a fair bit. And of course I used the track assistant, which gave me this kind of frequencies, but then I added in a few additional things, like you would obviously be aware, track assistant isn't something you can just, I mean, you don't have to use that as a preset if you don't want to. You can go in there and add your own EQ moves as well. So that's exactly what I did on that. Now that's the piano on its own. Now with the drums, as you can see, the piano plays out through the whole track here. So I had the drums, and I'll just play this out to you separately so you can hear them. Actually, let me just quickly do this. Alright, so obviously it's just a kick, a clap, closed hi-hat, and another closed hi-hat, and that little clicky thing there, like a wood block kind of sound. Gives that old kind of fashioned sound, I guess, you get out of that. Now, the next thing there is for plugins. Basically, I've just got all the samples. I do have some compression on the kick and some saturation. The clap's just a little bit saturated there, and I believe I've rolled off some of the some of the top end on the clap. Yeah, I did. So I rolled off a little bit of top end on the clap. I mean, all of this obviously it's just for the basis of the video. I'm not showing you mixing too much into this, but this again, you know, a bit of top end rolled off, and that as well. What's the next instrument I got there? Rolled some top end off that. So I tend to roll some top end off the drums, especially when they're too ear piercing. I find that you don't get a lot of other instruments coming through in the top end. Like say for example the piano and those top end frequencies on the kick and the, sorry, not the kick, the clap, the hi-hats and all that sort of stuff, you might get clashing or masking, and that's another whole issue altogether with mixing. But that's the type of thing that I did with that. So as you can see, that's the main throughout the whole entire beat. That's the main drums that I use. I don't really change up the pattern at all. So I mean, it's a very basic beat, and I mean that's kind of, I guess, sometimes the good thing about basic stuff. Now with the violin, it's very similar to the chord pattern or the chord structure with the piano. So you'll see the bass notes here are pretty much the ones that I've used for the violin, and there's not much change to that. So it's just kind of carrying along with the piano, and it's introducing itself within the what would be classified as a chorus. Then the next thing I had here was the bass itself, which obviously, as you can see, they're very similar. It's just a little bit different. So it's kind of like plucking the bass, moving along with the bass, kind of a little bit more than the violin was. But that's the pattern that I use there. I'll just play the violin and the bass together so you can hear them. So that's what they sounded like together. They kind of go in unison, and that's, I guess, one fashion of creating with the beat. Excuse me. That's green tea. It's pretty good too. So, I mean, with this type of beat, like I said, you just stick to the basics. You don't have to go overboard. It's not a trap beat, or it's not a hip hop beat that has to be crazy. You just make them very simple, you know. So then at the start here, I'll just move this to the first introductory section of this. So I've got piano. So as you can see, I've got the horn section here. And actually, before I go back into that, I want to show you the plugins that I used for the violin. So for the violin, I've got Contact, and I'm playing with Sessions Pro. So if you have the Native Instruments bundle, this is complete 9 that I have. I didn't upgrade to 10, and I'm pretty sure 11 is out as well. So I haven't bothered upgrading to that, because in my opinion, I think, you know, you can get over flooded with sounds, and I think as a producer sometimes, not all the time, but I think sometimes it's really good to restrict the amount of stuff that you have so that you can really make do, especially I guess for your account as well. But you know, for your bank account balance, you don't want to go spending all this sort of money onto plugins and at the end of the day have trouble trying to find the sound that you're after. I mean, when I produce tracks, personally, I like to be creative, and I like to start to just use other things. Like, for example, I would use a violin, but I might manipulate that violin to sound like something completely different to make another sound within a beat. So I mean, personally, I just don't have to have every single plugin that comes out every week, because if I did, I'd probably be broke. So, I mean, that's just a piece of good advice, I guess. Like, I remember years ago, I remember hearing somebody say, and they were really good producers as well, just restrict the stuff you have and you'll be more creative with what you've got, basically. So anyway, the next thing for the bass, I use the Scarby bass, which is also in that complete set there. It just looks like that, and they're all the things that I have on it. So I've got a filter just rolling off some of the top end. I've got a compressor, which is just controlling the bass. I've got R bass, which is part of the waves. I think it's in the Renaissance. Yeah, it is. It's Renaissance bass. So that gives me a bit of low end on the bass, or additional. Kind of just brings up the frequency a little bit higher as well, into more mid-range, lower mid-range sort of stuff. Then I've got max bass, which gives me that extra mid-range kind of talk that I wanted, and just helps the bass show up on laptop speakers. Basically, it's psychoacoustics kind of thing. Then obviously the EQ that I've got here, which is using Alloy. See, this is I use this EQ. I've used this EQ for about two and a bit years now. Before I got Neutron, which is what I'm starting to use a lot now. But I feel that I don't want to give away, I don't want to give up using old-fashioned EQ, because I don't want to lose the stuff that I've learnt for training my ear to pick up on certain frequencies, which I think if I use Neutron too much with the track assistant, I'll start to get lazy. So Neutron's great, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not good. It's just that I don't like to be lazy sometimes. I want to start, continue to learn things within my mixing and stuff like that. So anyway, so the next thing there was session horns, as I was getting to that, and that's the plugin that I use to play out the horns within this track. I've got an intro section, which is just as you heard there, and then I've got the main section, which is just an add-on to the intro section. As you can see, it's the same kind of chord structures which were in the piano, and you'll be able to hear that now. So that chord alone, to me, I could make 5 other beats with just that chord structure. And that's kind of what's cool about making beats. Like, I find that, I'll be making a beat and then I'm like, oh wow, that chord, I could have just used that in another beat. And sometimes I get silly because I'll start creating other beats within that, either within the same beat project, or I'll cancel that beat, take the chord structure and go and make another beat. So that's kind of one trick I guess you can learn from beat making, is just listen to the chords that you play, listen to the chords that you find elsewhere, like listen to samples, listen to everything that you can find, and just think about what chords that you could use to make a hip-hop beat or a trap beat or whatever type of beat it is, jazz beat, whatever you're into as far as music production. I like to make lots of different styles. I don't like to just stick to the one. I personally try and do a lot of different things with just being creative in the process. The next thing was this synth, which I've got here. That is, what instrument have I got? Everyone want to see my cat? Mittens, come here. Oh, look, you can be on the video, Mittens. There you go. She's probably not very happy about this, but hey, whatever. All right, thanks for coming in, Mittens. Oh. All right, so Massive. I've got Massive here, which this is pretty much just one section of the track that I played it out, and this is what it sounded like. Okay, so just to make a bit of a mix-up, dropped that in the beat, and I found that it worked really well. The next thing here is some reverb with EQ on it. The reverb that I'm using is the RSC24. Pretty nice reverb just for throwing on some drums or whatnot. But I've done some drastic EQ to get rid of some of the low end off the reverb and some of the top end. And I've just left some of the mid frequencies there to create that reverb effect that I wanted. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the beat in essence. There's not too much to it, as I was saying before. There is some mixing techniques that I definitely put into making this as well, but in general, it's a pretty kind of basic kind of beat. So I mean, just to briefly explain the mixing and stuff like that, in mind, I pretty much mixed this. Let's go to the group tracks. So I'll just show you the levels that I've got. So as you can see, the levels are kind of variant, and the way that I mixed it was to obviously get the drums first, kind of tame them and have them controlled with the rest of the beat. Compression and EQ are basically the main things that you're using within a mix, and I did use a de-esser, which I did a kind of funny thing here that I don't always do. But I put my drums completely in mono using this de-esser, and I use the de-esser to tame some of the top end frequencies as well. It's kind of a funny thing to do, but it does work sometimes, especially with things that you want to tame the top end hissy kind of sound with drums. I tend to, which I might actually make another video on, I tend to use de-essers a lot for different things. Like, you can use the de-esser for so many different things. It doesn't have to just be for vocals and S's and P's. It's really handy for certain other, you know, things like drums for this example. So I made the drums in mono using this mono de-esser and de-ess some of that out. I've got this other compressor here which comes with the complete Ultimate pack. I find that the VC 160 is quite good for some applications, and these drums were a good call for that. This compressor, it's actually turned off. That's the original compressor that I had on there, and that comes with Maschine as well. But EQ wise, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of EQ happening with this EQ here. Just some of the real low end stuff, some mid-range frequencies, and some of the top end, and a little bit of a shelf there as well. Might be hard to see that EQ, but I might expand that once I'm doing this as an editing part. Now with the Neutron, again, similar kind of, which is interesting. What I found was interesting about Neutron is all the EQ moves that I did myself. Like, this is well before I put Neutron on this track. They were pretty much almost exactly the same EQ moves. Like, I was really shocked, because that's about, yeah, 1450. So F sharp, and what was this on at 3.5. So similar kind of moves, but not exactly the same. But I dipped out some of the frequencies at 380. They did 209, somewhere like that. But yeah, I mean, not exactly the same, but I was just shocked to see that it kind of was trying to do the same thing I did with the low end as well. But yeah, I mean, if you have Neutron, or if you're looking at Neutron as a plugin, Neutron is pretty fantastic, especially because of, I'll just quickly bring that back up again as well. With the Neutron plugin, you've got all of these plugins in one plugin here, and you can pretty much set the track assistant to turn that on. It will do all its stuff behind the scenes, and it comes up with what they call a preset. It's not a static preset though, it's a dynamic preset, because obviously it's come up with that based on the audio that's submitted to the plugin. And it gives you an exciter, a transient shaper if you wanted that. Obviously that's deactivated. It's got an EQ compressor as well, and it sets those things up for you, so it saves you a lot of work on trying to figure out what settings you would use for that particular setup there. The fantastic thing as well, it's got this masking feature which you can use on any of the plugins that you've got this actually on. So you can put it onto your violin and see what issues you got with masking there, put it on your piano, etc. And that's bizarre. I wonder why I have noise there. I must have a plugin that's giving it noise. Yeah, I do. The delay. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's the beat in essence. That is pretty much it. So I hope that you guys learned something out of this beat, and if there's something you want to ask me in the comments, please do. And also remember to subscribe to the channel, because that's what makes me want to do these videos and continue to do them. And otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and peace.